Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show. As you're probably aware, it's Friday. That means another Arduin review. Today, I'm going to review Shadowlands by David A. Hargrave. This is volume 7. I went over it again this morning, just bone up on it, and it's a little bit thinner than the previous volumes. And spoiler alert: this is the book that had the announcement of David A. Hargrave's passing, which was kind of depressing. To see it there and remember, you know, how much we all you know lost out when he was no longer with us. But it is actually one of my favorite books, not just because of the title, but because he and I both simultaneously created a place called Shadowlands. There's a reason I have the name of Shadow, and we'll go over that some other time. But we both created another dimension called Shadowlands independently of each other, and ours differs greatly. Mine's a lot different than his. His is not a place you can really hang out very long before you either die or just go stark raving mad. And elves are welcome in mine. They can't survive in this version, but and that comes up a few pages into the book. But let's head right into the table of contents, the Arduinian customs. Now, right off the bat, I think just about every dungeon master should compile a bunch of books very similar to these Arduin grimoires, and this is actually a really good template to mimic, so that your players could read up on your world in their spare time. I know not a lot of dungeon masters are you know prone to write down large stacks of paper for their players to read, while others are. But if your game world's going to last any length of time, I definitely think mimicking these books for your own specific world, not just your house rules and things like that, which you could always throw in your own grimoires, so to speak. But like, for example, the Arduinian customs, a lot of places are going to have little quirks. This town, that city, that country, that forest. Write them down, and make the best of them. If you're going to go adventuring in the land of Arduin, speaking of which, I just recently mounted the other map, the map of Chorin, right next to my other map I received from George over at Emperor's Choice, and I think they look pretty spectacular right next to each other. Looking forward to the opportunity to run Arduin as a game world once I read through that gigantic phone book of Arduinian lore, which I still haven't cracked open yet because I've been reading other books, but rest assured I will get to it. Then the Underworld of Arduin, very similar to other Dungeons and Dragons campaigns that have a world beneath the surface, whether it's inhabited by the drow or dwarves or gnomes or what have you. His take on it, which we all should have something similar to that. I'm currently trying to reread through some Edgar Rice Burroughs, you know, books that are very, similar to that have their own Hollow Earth or world inside the world, so that you have not just a couple of dungeons here and there, but you've got vast underground areas to explore, and new peoples to meet, monsters to fight, treasures to win over, and adventures to have. So again, another great thing to have. And then of course the next chapter is Shadowlands, which I kind of jumped the gun on that, but I really like his take on some things, but other things, I my version is just different. More for the lore, excuse me, of my particular campaigns, where people, if they ever go there, they're gonna be there for a while, and some of the drawbacks of his version just don't lend that they just still make it possible. You can go in, you can get stuck there and die, or you can get there and get the hell out as quick as possible, because if you don't, you're going to get stuck there and die. Mine's more of an elemental plane that you, once you overcome certain difficulties, you can hang out there for a month, a year, whatever it takes to accomplish the mission. More legendary gems and jewels of Arduin. I went over that with, I believe, the last book. Making treasures that don't have to be magical. They're just works of art that are highly valuable, with not just their monetary value, but the history and the people who want those treasures back in their collection, or their vault, or their crown jewels, things like that. Great idea. That way the players can get the fame and notoriety of returning said item back to its rightful owner, reap the rewards, and not have to worry about losing the item, through adventuring or theft or something like that. But they can get the money, get the reward, whatever it is. Maybe it's a title, or free access to this or that. And move on, because they're adventurers. They really shouldn't be hanging out in the same place too long, until they're like I was telling my son earlier, 9th, 10th level, and they can build their own castle or tower or guild or something like that. And then, the game takes a completely different turn. The Cult of the Crimson Kiss, he went on about a particular, cult that is in his world, and I definitely like the idea of having at least one, cult that is, the antagonist for many game sessions, until they're either defeated or the players get away from the area and they think they're safe, and then maybe at some point you bring them back, because, who doesn't like returning bad guys? They should never just, oh, you defeated them, let's move on to the next thing. Should always have that threat of them coming back. And then to go along with the I forget what it was called, but there were rogues or thieves that had innate magical abilities. Well, here's a chapter, Psi Rogues, where thieves, instead of having a magical ability, they could have 1 to 3 or 4 psychic abilities that they just were born with. I love the idea, not just because of the powers themselves, but just a lot of game systems have that, where you have like a minor ability, whether magic or psionic, but you're not a full-fledged psychic or magic character, just so you can not necessarily go toe-to-toe with the psychics and wizards, but have that extra ace up your sleeves. New magic, that being wizard, illusion, druid, rune singer, priestly, rune weaver, and some notes on magical competence. Later on down the road, all these things get, compiled into one book, and, it's better to be able to read those all at once. I tend to skim through the spells and then abruptly forget about them because I'm not using them, and I think it would be better to make some characters and see the spells in play to really learn them. Just reading them, occasionally I read a spell and it's like, oh my god, that's a great spell, but I don't know that there isn't something else out there in like some of the huge volumes of, well, you can't see them, but I've got the 2nd edition spell compendiums, which are just massive. It's a stack of spells like this big, and the magic items, of course, which are even better. But I really like his spells, but a lot of times I just get distracted with trying to absorb so much, and I already know a ton of spells from so many different game systems, not just Dungeons and Dragons, and sometimes they when you're not playing, they just sort of congeal together and just become unusable at the time, but once you're playing, it unlocks all those blocks, and you can rememorize them and relearn them, and find ways to use them. But there was a chapter here called Demonic Magic to go alongside the Dragon Magic, which I really like the idea of spells being only usable by certain creatures, as it were, demons or dragons or elves or dwarves or what have you. Well, dwarves shouldn't be casting spells, but that's a topic for another time. But the demonic magic was pretty terrifying, they really should be terrifying. If they can cast spells, they should have access to spells that no one else can use. Even if you find a demon's spell book, you should just not be able to use them. It's just cut and dried. Sorry, you can never do it unless somehow you die and become a demon. Then on to the new character race, or I don't know why I call it a race. Soothsayer isn't really a race. That's like an elf being a profession. But it was, to be honest, it was a little overpowering. I could see how being a soothsayer in a game could just be not just, just a total, walk through the park for the character, but, unscrupulous players could really take advantage of every single situation, every 3 minutes. Okay, what do I know that's going to happen now? Kind of situation. And, those players that you let into your game that are really there just for the free munchies and the beer and will do whatever it takes to disrupt the game. Don't ever let it be a soothsayer. I'm telling you right here now. I think they're really better off relegated to NPCs. You need a question answered, go to the soothsayer. Don't be a soothsayer. Then the new race, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Padaha Ha. Basically, they're pandas, giant humanoid panda bears that can be run as player characters, and I like them, but I don't see too many players wanting to play them. In my experience, knowing my players, they're going to be dwarves, they're going to be elves, they're going to be humans. I can't remember the last time I had a player that was a hobbit. I can't remember the last time a player was a gnome. Half orcs, yeah, definitely had a lot of half orcs and Franks. The little guy loves the Franks, and but to each their own. If you want to be the kung fu panda, here's your opportunity, and I definitely think they'd be a lot of fun as NPCs. And then of course there's new critters. That also includes a chapter on new felines. Apparently Dave was a cat person, not a dog person. No problem there. I used to be a cat person, but now that I've got Chewy, I'm definitely a dog person. Don't get me wrong, I love cats. I've got my own version of humanoid cat characters in all of my game worlds, but I don't actually have a race of dog people, which is probably because I like dogs and not as characters. They should be pets. Sorry, dogs, but you're pets. You're better as pets. You'll be the best pet of all pets ever, unless you get one of those winged cats, and then that would be kind of arguable. I really like the winged cats, but anyways, I'm rambling. Courtsian encounters and thiefly encounters. Could have just gone on with a random encounter table for every single profession, which would have been a little more fair. There's always room for tables like this for your characters. I realize that thieves and assassins and the courtsian are, I'm probably mispronouncing that one too. I don't hear that word very often. But characters that sneak off or do things outside the party, and you want to just quickly run through that and get that out of their system. Okay, you went sneaking off outside the party. This is what happened. Okay, get back to the party before you die. And then special ability chart for nasty characters. I guess that goes with the thieves. Then there was a chapter on clan tribal names, which is cool, but I've never had trouble creating interesting names for the peoples of my world, so I'm gonna just breeze right over that. Then odd weapons of Arduin. I like this. Like I said before, I also have my own unique weapons, native to my worlds or my campaign or what have you, and I usually just bring them over from campaign to campaign because they're so much fun. If you can come up with a weapon that hasn't been already created, throw it in there. It really makes the bad guys a little bit more unique, and the NPCs and of course the villains. He's got that strange weapon that nobody else knows how to use, and if you kick his ass, then you take it from him and try to master it. Then there was a chapter on technological weapons. I loved it because, as most people who've played in my games know, I'm a big gun fan, so guns are probably going to be in all my Dungeons and Dragons campaigns in one technological level or another. Usually not laser guns and things like that, unless it's from a crashed spaceship, which has happened and will happen again. But, I flintlocks, muskets, arquebus, things like that, guarantee they're going to be in my games. But he came up with, just a nice little list of technological, as he calls them, doodads to throw into your game. A great idea to have, a device that, you have to figure out, and then once you find out, it gives you another ace up your sleeve. It's not magical, but people will obviously attribute it somehow to being a magic item. But I've got a few of those in my game as well. And then another short chapter on the mythical and other metals of Arduin. Again, maybe a little bit too in depth a chapter or subject. Most players aren't really going to care. Is it gold? No. Is it platinum? Is it mithril? Okay, I don't care. Is it breakable? Otherwise, oh, what? It's cold resistant? Okay, cool. I'll make it into a sword and throw it in my stack of swords, for fighting frost dragons or something like that. He just really went off on it, and I've made a few magical metals or non-magical metals of my own, but nobody cared. They really just, it's not that big a deal, and it really just, is one of those time sinks that's just going to eat up, time at the table. And if you're going to do it, just, make 3, maybe a half a dozen if you got to. But, you might as well just take them out of the Arduin books, use them, and that way someday you might bump into someone who's like, oh, I know what that is, blah, blah, blah. I ran in a game and that was there. But, all in all, this is a great book. I'm going to put that easily in my top 3 favorites. And, of course, there's also a small chapter on the World Book of Cause at the end, just in case you don't have the gigantic phone book of Arduin, and, give you a little chunk at a time to read. But I'm really looking forward to reading that. I just need to power through a few other books and really, maybe I'll get to it by spring break. But until then, folks, I hope you guys will all join us over at Tenkars Tavern tonight. It's Friday night, and after burgers, we always hang out and listen to the show, and join in the chat, and have a nice hour or two amongst gaming friends out there who you're not going to get a chance to meet in person unless you live in the area. But until then, I hope I see you guys there. Hope you guys have a nice weekend, and we will see you Sunday, where the little guy and I will be painting some giants instead of dragons this time. But just, have a great weekend, guys. Spring is almost here. Winter's almost over. And I know times are tough right now, but, just remember, you've always got a game out there waiting for you, no matter what happens. So, we love you. We'll see you soon. Have a great weekend. Good night.
You know that there is still time for you to accept the truth.